Oh, happy Friday to you, Scott Baker.
Mikey, how are you? Friday, February 6th. It is, in fact, another edition of Lead Better. Thank you for everybody joining us here today, watching or listening. Today's field note is it's in the 1700s. We're kind of off by one count, we think. So I think it's 1702 or 1704.
1702.
Oh, two? Okay,
Yes.
good. And the title is How the Best Leaders Normalize Not Knowing. So we would all like to say, I'm sort of characterized by my curiosity. I'm not a know-it-all. Like I ask questions, and we would say that probably in an organization, as the field note says, the quality of the decisions is in proportion to the ability for people to say, I don't know. Let's explore that. Now, that's easy to say. It's a little harder to do, and it's even harder, as the headline says, to normalize. So how do you do that?
Right. So saying I don't know is an attack on someone's ego, especially if they're full
Hmm?
of ego, right? Having to admit that they don't know it's a real challenge, right?
Mm-hmm.
I even know a few people who have the tendency to like over-index on like something else in order to not have to
Yep.
admit that they don't know, right?
Right.
Um, so the fact that they make a mistake is something that might be a little bit more of a challenge for them to admit, right?
Mm-hmm.
But saying I don't know is way up there in the like if
Yeah.
I, it's one thing. It might be just under saying I love you, right? Be on a difficult three words to be able to say.
Right. Yeah, you can imagine it being a thing, and somebody says, and then they start to, they're exploring what language can I use to say. I got no idea. The
So
now,
I
now
even have
we,
a
you,
question about the way that we bring
uh-huh.
this, like the notion of like how we are recommending leaders here go
Mm-hmm.
ahead and do something at the beginning of a lot of
Mm-hmm.
meetings so that they can get what we don't know out on the table is that a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people might even try to do a judo move on that question. If we're starting with okay, well, let's talk about everything that we don't know about this subject. A lot of times, the only way that people could even start that conversation is by listing the things that they do know, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is not exactly the way that you're trying. It's not what you're trying to get at, right? And it's not this. It's not a reverse move to say let's get all of what we do know out on the table, so it's obvious what we do not know. It's a way of trying to say let's admit what our blind spots are here, our known blind
Mm-hmm.
spots, and what our potential unknown blind spots are.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And I was trying to think, I don't think I've actually been in a meeting where something like that has actually happened. It'd be interesting.
right. And there's a couple different ways to ask the question. And because I just mentioned it, but the idea of asking what the known blind spots are and then asking what the unknown blind spots might be is two different ways to like kind of get deep into the I don't know territory.
Yeah. Right.
Um,
Well, the this when we do this idea, and that is the central, sort of focus of the field note is can you as a leader, and I don't think that necessarily has to be like, all right, we're beginning the meeting now, and the first slide in the deck is let's start to list all the things we don't know. You can make this very natural. It can be done in conversations. You can be it could be one on one. It could be one in a group. It could be like, well, what's fuzzy here? You can even say, I'm unclear about a couple of the things. What are the things that you'd still like to have more information about? You can use language that says, do you really know? You don't know, right? I mean, you can soften all of that, which kind of
right.
brings it down. But I do like the idea of saying, look, we're facing a big challenge. We're going to be launching a new product, opening a new plant. We're going to put out a new course. And what would be the things that would be helpful, like for us to kind of like, well, what's the old thing? It's the unknown knowns and the known unknowns and the things you know and the things you don't know and all of that. And it's the unknown unknowns, right? Where it's like you didn't even know you didn't know it.
Right.
And so that's what you're trying to get to here, and that is the danger one. There was even a whole Errol Morris documentary about Donald Rumsfeld. I think it was something called one version of that. I wish I had that at the top of my mind, but I
But you
don't
don't
know.
know. Yeah.
I don't know.
Exactly. No,
Um,
when you're going into a meeting and you are actually going to throw this out on the table, and if you're the one who's directing the meeting and you know you're going to ask that question, then it will probably be that you'll end up brainstorming a little bit about the things that you don't know first. And if it were me, then that would drive me to go ahead and look a few things up of the things
mhm,
that I don't know this going into that. And I'm going to go ahead and ask the question. And I wonder if that's the best way to do it. Now, it is mentioned quietly in the field
mhm,
that asking that question frequently when you honestly don't
mhm,
know is a good way to do it. I
mhm,
was listening to a podcast recently, and the top comment in the YouTube comments after that was like, "Hey, Alex," to the host of the show.
mhm.
It'd be nice if you asked a few questions that you didn't already know the answer to, right? And I never even thought about it from the podcast past host point of view. But then when I re-listened to another podcast
Hmm.
of his, it did kind of become obvious that he was always asking questions in a way where he was demonstrating his knowledge and
Right.
then never getting to the point where he was saying, fill in the gaps for me. Right.
Sure. Right.
And,
Or
but
even, or when somebody gives an answer saying, huh, that's
right.
really interesting. Like where you
And
kind of have that, like, I never thought of that before.
right. And so the reciprocal building, like the thing that we're most excited about when we listen to podcasts is we see that the conversational partners are going back and forth with each other and we see that
Hmm.
they're learning something in the process. I think that's what the commenter must have meant. It's like,
Sure.
it'd be great to watch you learn something in an authentic way. So
Yeah.
it makes
Right.
me wonder, back to our original scenario, if I'm going to be a leader who's throwing out, here's going to be the topic. I'm going to say, what are the things that we don't know? My tendency to want to look up the three things that I'm going to say I don't know, maybe I shouldn't, right? Maybe I should
Hmm.
on purpose, like prove to the group that I'm being very engaged with my curiosity here, saying I really don't know. Um,
Yeah.
Definitely don't want to get caught in a situation where we look up everything ahead of time and I do know everything going into it.
Well, it's just, I think it's actually good. I mean, you could substitute for the people that are kind of hung up on this. You can substitute lack of knowledge for just curiosity
Right.
or learning from what the other person knows, and that's a better, it's like, and these threads in the business world and the organizational world kind of even go back to Covey's, seek first to understand, then to be understood. We have a posture of kind of assuming that the other person has some knowledge that we don't have, that we're going to kind of engage in that in a way that's great for the relationship, actually, as you seek that. But there is this question of, can you, when, if you say, and we try to think of our organization, CRA Admired Leadership, as a learning organization. We have lots of learning experiences. And if you also have that, that begins to normalize it. But you as the leader are setting the stage. And I like to think about, recently I've had some conversations with a retired philosophy professor in the Pittsburgh area named Esther Meek, and she's a student, or kind of had done her work on the Hungarian philosopher scientist named Michael Polanyi, who developed this idea around focal subsidiary integration. But her out of that, she just developed this idea that it's not just that you actually pursue knowing. I think I can make this kind of at a level I can understand, which is it's not a chore. It's actually, she talks about it kind of as a loving relationship with the unknown. It's sort of a covenant to know, and that it's sort of this dance that you pursue. And if you have that attitude in your life, that there's this embrace of learning, there's embrace of knowing, that there is that sort of changes the vibrancy of it. And I don't know about you. I mean, I find myself at the precipice of age 62 and thinking, if let's be optimistic here. Let's pretend like I've got 30 years to go. And I really sit around and I think, there are so many things that I really don't know that I really want to know, that I would love to know. And I'm not even sure that would be enough time. Like, I'm not even sure it would be possible to have enough time in that 30 years to know all of those things. And so if you have that attitude of excitement and eagerness to say, let's go, let's lean in, then when it comes down to the day to day, then that pattern starts to be the same imprint. Well, tell me about that. Well, where does that go? What are the unknown, knowns and the unknown unknowns and all of that? I love that framework. And then I think particularly bringing it back to this, if you go into meetings, conversations, you start to ferret out those things, you are going to get some data points. You are going to get some things to pursue that will lead to better decisions, that will lead to better outcomes.
Right. There needs to be a better name than focal subsidiary integration.
Those philosophers, they always
right.
tough.
But the idea of turning it into a dance where you enjoy it, because a lot of people are threatened with a lack of knowledge, meaning that I have to now use the word ignorant to describe myself. Which shouldn't be a bad word, right? It shouldn't.
No, actually, think about it this way. The problem for a lot of us, the bears of little brains, is that because we don't even know what we don't know, we didn't think of even the question. It actually, the fact that it would be actually a higher sign of your intelligence that you were able to perceive the things that you really didn't know and say, look, this is a little unclear. And if your company's developing new AI products, new learning products, if you're looking at the impact of coming, LLM, evolutions and what that means. And a lot of people are like, okay, I kind of think I know where we're at. And then somebody's like, well, but this actually would do this. And I'm not sure what's going to happen if that happens. And if that happens, what happens when that happens? And it's going to be the most brilliant person that could actually point out the things that we really don't know yet that could most jeopardize the entire enterprise. You want that level of curiosity in your team. Right.
Okay. So the back end of this that's not really mentioned in the field note is the idea that, if we have properly cultivated a I don't know culture to where it's good, the backside of that becomes this notion of like, we are slow to make decisions because we're constantly wondering what we don't know, right? So what is, in a lot of ways, this might be like a tactic that it becomes a little bit more meta for a leader to be like, we're going to talk about what we don't know because, and you're actually talking about what you're trying to instill in the culture. If you allow it to be like this overriding framework that everyone knows that you're working within, instead of being like, no, I genuinely don't know, right? But you're instead being frank about the idea. We want to explore what we don't know before we move forward. That might help to mitigate this idea that we're constantly in this navel gazing mode of wondering and then never getting around to making a decision. So I don't think that goes up with a lot of admired leader behaviors where we tell people out loud the behavior that we are demonstrating. But this might be one of those things where we kind of say out loud, this is part of our culture, and we talk about it and we do state it out loud. It's just being like a cultural thing that we let inculcate people.
Yeah, right.
I don't know.
Well, you pointed something, and it's not the point of the field note, but it kind of overlaps to this in the exact reverse. So, and it'll be a fun little thing to explain because you just kind of talked about how we would explain to some of our clients and coach people that we coach admired leader behaviors. But one of the things that is interesting that actually is very effective is I've seen some of the best master coaches in our organization when they're presenting in front of a room. They might not start with saying, well, let's list what we don't know. What they actually say is, well, let's talk about motivation and inspiration. What are or feedback or whatever it is, and say, well, what are the best practices that you know, and start writing them like on the flipboard or whatever else. And there's this, and there's this, and there's this, and they'll go through like 15 or 20 things, and they'll be like, all right, so what else? Anything else?
Right.
All right, we've exhausted the topic.
Right.
And we haven't even yet got to the thing we're about to tell them about.
Right. And
so now
it's a way to set up fanness. And no one ever talks about fanness.
Right, exactly right.
Motivation and inspiration that we don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
And so it's a great way to like expose that gap. But that's an opposite way of what we're doing, even though it kind of creates the same effect.
Yeah, and what happens there is like if you said, well, let's talk about motivation, inspiration. There's a concept I'd like to talk to you about. By the way, you can get the fanness, sort of outline of content. There's a video on our YouTube channel about it. Also, if you sign up for Field Notes, which you already have because you're watching this, you can get a PDF to download that kind of goes through that construct. And then we have all kinds of behaviors on our main platform how to do that. Okay, commercial over. But in doing that, what happens is if we say, let's talk about this, we've got this really cool concept. And then what happens in the audience or the people, they're like, yeah, I do that. I know that's one of my go-tos. Yeah, I've done that forever.
Right.
But if you in the conversation say, well, let's go through all the different ways, and is anybody else anything else we don't know,
Yes.
about, or that we haven't
So
listed here
we
yet?
all agree that this is
Yeah.
everything we know about inspiration and motivation.
Yeah, right. And then you say, well, here's this idea.
Yeah.
Well, then you actually just you actually made it. You're not trying to like win a war here. You're trying to get people to be really open to saying that's unbelievably cool. Right. So by getting everybody to kind of
know-it-all approach of trying to
exactly right. Yeah. And now you're like, I've opened up this door to knowing about a thing that would be so valuable for you. And so that's actually just one of the amazing things I've learned and been able to kind of incorporate in the years I've worked at Admired Leadership. So that's a bonus for everybody that made it to this point in the Lead Better conversation.
Great. Excellent bonus. And, that was actually not a very good ad read that you did there, Scott. I think maybe we should, especially when you end it with like ad over, right?
Ad over. Yeah. Promotional over. Yeah.
Maybe we should incorporate our own ad reads for our products every now and then.
Every now and okay. All right.
Yeah. We'll see. Maybe next time.
I'll work on it.
We'll talk tomorrow. See you then.